Welcome to the Overflow Worship Podcast, where we want you to thrive in the ministry God has called you to. We truly believe that God's placement has purpose, and we're here for you with encouragement and tools for the journey.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Overflow Worship Podcast. I'm your host, Andrea Olson. It is great to be back in podcast land. Thank you all for joining us today. I am really excited because I have some guests back with me again. They were on the podcast way in the beginning, back in, I think last spring. I'd have to go back and look exactly when it was, but we had such a sweet conversation and they were with us at the conference in October. And so I just asked if they would come back and join us and share their hearts a little bit more. And I know you're going to be blessed today. So I just want to welcome back to the podcast our favorite couple, E.B. and Shane Cole. Welcome back, guys.
Hey, everybody.
Greetings. So good to be back.
So good to have you guys back. I just loved our conversation the last time, and of course, just appreciate you guys and your friendship and just all that you poured into our people this last October. So, why don't we start there? Just give everybody a little bit of maybe a bit about yourself for those who don't know who you are, if they're first-time listeners, and then we'll kind of jump right into conference recap after that, because I think our listeners who weren't there want to know, what did you guys talk about? What did you do? So, Evie, why don't you dive in and just tell everybody a little bit about yourself and what the Lord did in and through you at the conference this year?
I would love to, Andrea. Y'all forgive me if I start coughing. I'm fighting a little bit of a cold, but I don't usually talk like a 40-year-old man. But today that's the case. So my name's E.B. I'm married to the wonderful, I said lovely recently and people laughed, so he is lovely, but he does have a big beard if you've never met or seen him. I'm married to Shane, who's here with us today, and you're gonna love everything he has to say about anything too. I love when you share, Shane, but I'm going to share first. We live in Nashville, Tennessee right now. We're from Atlanta, Georgia. And we have just been playing music and writing and being creative for the past 10, 15 years of our life. That's been in private event bands and churches. That's where our heart's at. Of course, we love to lead people in worship through song. And we try to just live a life of worship no matter where we're at playing music. So we teach a little bit. We joke. I tell people sometimes that we'll take about any opportunity people will give us within reason if we feel like we can do it. So that's kind of what life looks like for us. I'm 28. I'll be 29 in March. And so we kind of made this move to Nashville 7 months ago because we feel like we don't have kids yet. And we're like, if we're going to do it, now's the time to try something new.
Yeah.
So we're 7 months into that, and we were at the Overflow conference. Andrea, how many months ago now was that?
It was about 3 months ago, which is crazy.
Feels like 30 months ago.
Yeah.
But I was so excited because I got to see snow. I don't think anybody there was excited like I was.
No.
But I was.
We were like, what? October snow? No.
Yeah. We were so honored to be a part. And I just had the sweetest time in my sessions. I'm more of a kind of a feeler, and I had, of course, some outlines planned for my sessions, but I was just kind of excited to get in there with people, see what they needed, what they wanted to ask, and kind of flow. And it turned into the sweetest things. We did one session on finding your voice, and that was really cool. By the end of the session, we had the lights out and we had the Christmas lights in the ceiling on and the lights out, and we were just spontaneous singing in the room. It was so special.
Wow.
That session was on my heart. Andrew, we talked before about should we do it, should we not? Because in my voice lessons that I teach so many times, I just see where we're mimicking what we see around us, which is totally natural. But I've just seen in my own life where God has something so much deeper and more for each of us. He made us each so intricately and uniquely. And I loved just seeing people's eyes light up talking about how God has gifted them uniquely. And of course, I'm really passionate about the technical elements of singing and breathing properly. And so we did a session on that. And I can't even remember, Andrea, the other session. We did technical stuff. We did the finding your voice.
The one with Josh.
Yeah. Wonderful teaching with Josh. We taught, planning a worship set. We did that from top to bottom. So it was really special. I was so encouraged and inspired by how eager people were to drive through the snow to come learn and grow together. That was just really encouraging. The worship was beautiful. I loved the night of worship where the community was coming together and just packed out the room, like literally in a snow. That wasn't a snowstorm, was it? It was to me from the south.
Yeah. Well, it was a little bit like, ooh, because it was sort of raining and then freezing. So then that's scary because, the roads turn into an ice skating rink.
Everybody's got jokes about the people in the south and their ice and snow.
Yes.
So yeah, it was just lovely, Andrea. It was really special to be a part.
We loved having you both there. It was so special. And, I love what you said about expectancy, because there was an expectancy in the room on Friday night in the worship, but really the whole weekend. And as I processed it afterwards, I really felt like it was that the people fought to get there, like literally because of the weather. And so they came with an expectancy and kind of there's a fierceness of like, I'm going into the throne room. We're going to worship with all we've got because I had to fight to get here and I want to be here. And that was really, really special. And to have people like you and Shane there to pour into people was just really special, really incredible. So we're so grateful. And so your other half, Shane, EB kind of gave the rundown of where you guys are at and what you're doing. And why don't you share a little bit about what Overflow looks like for you in October?
Yeah. Hey, everybody. So EB kind of gave a good rundown of, who we are. But yeah, as she kind of said, we just do so many different things. And it's been that way for a long time. Sometimes my gut, my gut tells me like, man, I just want to sink my teeth into one thing. We were actually talking about that last night, but as soon as I get a little rest and I bounce back, I'm back to it. I'm like, you know what? I love having all these things spinning at once. I love teaching conferences and having my lessons and leading worship with my wife and playing in a rock and roll band and doing this and doing that. So it's been really cool. And I feel like you, Andrea, I think you really leveraged that with my sessions, because, I just come from such a place of like, 1 week, someone will call me and just say, hey man, lay down a couple bass lines on this project. The next week, someone will say, hey man, we have this crazy idea of this show. Can you music direct the whole thing? And then the next week, someone will say, hey, will you put tracks together for our student-led night of worship and all that different stuff. So we're just kind of always coming from different angles like that. And I guess I'm a little bit of a multi-instrumentalist, but my strengths would definitely be guitar and bass, bass guitar, upright bass. And, throughout my life, I've done in some capacity, some level of like band leading or music directing. That's not an always thing. It's just an every once in a while thing. So, the sessions we ended up doing, or that I ended up doing, one of them we called Rhythm and Groove. The why and how. And that was kind of, when you and I were brainstorming, I said, well, I play a lot of bass and I've taught some bass workshops, and it kind of ended up turning into like a drum and bass thing because all the drummers wanted to come and hang out and see what the bass players were thinking. And you kind of took it and ran with it. That was a really cool class. And then we taught the roles of a guitar player.
Mm-hmm.
That was a really good one. And then I think the third one was the Nashville number system,
Yeah.
which honestly, in hindsight, so basically, like in the past when I had done a workshop, really I would just touch on numbers within the workshop
Yeah.
to kind of separate it and do our own thing with it. I think was huge. It was really good, and that was the easiest for me to teach because it's just so linear,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like it's just I guess since there's so much theory
Yeah.
supporting it, that then I was able to just like, hey, here's the ABCs of the whole thing.
Yeah.
We sat together. We had a lot of really, really good questions, and like we could have gone twice as long, and everybody would have stayed just as engaged, probably.
Cool.
So yeah, that was a really good time. And the bass class. What I found, and you said, you mentioned earlier, maybe like talking about some questions that we got in our
Yeah.
sessions. I feel like in my bass class, it was a lot of, or in my rhythm and groove class, it was a lot of people. There were worship pastors in there that, didn't really play bass or drums,
Yeah.
but they were just kind of coming at it from the perspective of like, how can I help my team?
Mm-hmm.
And then I had some piano players in there that were just curious,
Yes.
and it was cool. I really liked the way that went down, and I think a lot of the questions were like, I think they were coming from the perspective of like, I think a lot of the people sitting in the workshop were asking, hey, sometimes when I jump on bass, to help out or fill the spot, I don't understand how to do this, or sometimes my drummer does this and I don't know what to tell him, and things like that. So it really just reminded me that, I mean, we travel a ton, but I think it just reminded me, if you're in a community where there's just not a lot of musicians like available,
Mm-hmm.
that you just got to stay so flexible.
Yeah.
And I really admired everybody that came and was keeping an open mind, and they were like, I don't know a lot about bass, but I know there's a need. And that's the set. I have that time available during the worship conference, so
Yeah.
I would love to just go and see what Shane had to say. So I think that they walked away feeling a little better about it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seemed really cool, and the guitar thing was the same way. I think this is in general. There's so many more guitar players than I think when you're talking about your kind of your modern, your typically your modern band setup. When you're talking about keys, guitar, bass, drums,
Yep.
I feel like there's always an abundance of guitar players.
Yes.
So we had plenty of those, and the questions were coming at me strong, and it was really good. I think we had some really good conversations in there too.
That's amazing. I love
Yeah.
that. I love that. And that, for those of you who are listening and wondering, like, I've never been to the conference, what is it like? This is such a great picture of what it is like. And, I work hard, and my team and I work hard to bring people in like EB and Shane, who are just wanting to pour into you and wanting to come alongside of the needs. It's not like EB said, it's yes, we have our lesson plans and our, handouts and scripts and that kind of thing, but then it's also like, what do you guys need? And that opportunity for questions and that kind of thing. And I just thank you guys again for being willing to step into that and being willing to engage with everybody and love on them and pour into them, because it's it's priceless, and just such a huge need in the local church for people to understand that they're valued. That's my heart behind it all. It's like, where you're serving, where God has you, where you're planted, has value and purpose, and you can thrive in it. And so, yeah, it's pretty amazing that you guys were willing to come up and help us. So thanks again.
Of course.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I would do it 1,000 more times.
Thank you. Well, we will take you up on that for sure. So I think that that's a good spot to kind of shift gears. It's January, it's the new year, and, talking about thriving where you are and having purpose where you are. EB, you and I had a conversation a few weeks ago on the phone, just a heart chat about life and where we're at and all the things. And I think that whether it's right now or for someone in the future, we all could use a little bit of conversation and encouragement about what it looks like to thrive when we're kind of in the waiting or in irritation or agitation or just kind of uncertainty. And so I would love it if you two both would just have the conversation with me about where God has you right now, kind of what he's doing in your hearts and in your lives to encourage our people.
Mm-hmm. Shane, do you want to go first? You want me to?
Yeah, I could go first.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, for me, Evie mentioned, I think she mentioned, I'm 32, and I don't know if I had this part wrong, but I assumed when I was in my early 20s and I was looking at people in their early 30s or really anything past 30, I kind of always felt like, or it always kind of looked like, oh, well, they're settled in, like they've kind of got their thing. Yeah, I didn't even know that this was going to come up, but like a few minutes ago in this podcast, I said, I was talking about how we're jumping around all these different things, and sometimes I want one thing to sink my teeth into. I've been feeling that so much since we moved to Nashville. Everything. We were from Atlanta, and I'd lived there all my life, and it was like everything from the moment I started playing music when I was 12. I was traveling with actually to this day, he's a mentor of mine and one of my best friend. He is my best friend, I would say. But at the time I started traveling with this guy, his name is Scott, at age 15. And by, the next 3 years I was touring on the weekends and spring break and summer. Anytime I could, didn't have to be at school. I was playing gigs. And then I went to music school at 19, and it was just like, if you could see what I'm doing with my hands, I'm like pointing up like it's a mountain. It just felt like everything grew so beautifully and organically. And then even though we're only 250 miles away now, it was kind of like, I just kind of felt like we pulled the plug on a couple of things, and we're kind of in Nashville, and I'm almost in this like crisis mode. Like, I'm like, oh my gosh, what have I walked away from? And what are we doing here? And it's just weird to be like 32 and I've just had this feeling of, I'm going to get really honest here. I apologize. I did not ask Evie's permission, but, we're just like this, but, to be 32 and kind of have this sense of feeling a little bit, I don't know why this word keeps coming to mind, but I've unneeded, that's just been a really odd feeling for me. And I want to be, really strong and supportive for EB and everything. But I'm also just like, I've had to ask myself a lot of questions. When I'm out on the road doing certain things, I'm just having this conversation with myself. Like, wait, is this why I made this change in my life? Am I pursuing this? If I do pursue this, where is this going to go in 10 years? I've had a lot of questions, and I would say it's the beauty of it is Evie and I have had to have some conversations with each other that we've never had to have. And I think we're kind of in this process of like refining. And I think that we're in this season, man, on one hand, if this is the worst thing I've gone through, then I'm so lucky. I'm so blessed. I'm so fortunate. But on the other hand, I really I've had to trust God a lot, and I think some people, I guess if anybody's like career driven, and so for so long, I had a hard time even calling what I do a career. But, if you're career driven, I feel like you can relate to this. I've just really had to trust God with that, because I've had these feelings of like, man, all these years I've invested in people and in things and in projects and in bands, And I'm like, here I am 32. And if I just walked away, it would all be over. And, if the phone stopped ringing, what would I have to show for all these years? And Evie honestly she is probably the best human on earth, but so many times she's just been like, Shane, that's the enemy. That is not, that is not, it's not true. B, like, God is all over your life. She's just constantly encouraging me like that. So, that's where I'm at. I have really good days and I have really hard days. But we have, I think we've had a lot of really good conversations, and I think we've probably put a greater emphasis on rest. Since we've moved, we've kind of been like hyper work ethic, hyper, like, there needs to be stuff on the calendar kind of thing. And there's just been this push and pull of like, Evie's so good about this, but there's just been this push and pull of like, yo, yeah, hard work is great, but like, we got to keep our heads on straight. We got to take these 2 days off. Or for example, over the holidays, someone reached out about a couple of gigs on the 28th and then on New Year's Eve of December. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to take it. And Evie was like, yo, like, you're your own man. You can do what you want. And if it's really something we need to do, but she's like, I really, really, really want to encourage you not to do it. And I kicked and screamed on the inside for probably a solid 48 hours. And then it clicked. And then when December 28th rolled around.
Yeah, you weren't kicking and screaming then, were you?
Yeah, December 28th rolled around, and I was like, I looked at Evie and I was like, you were so right. Like, I just was not thinking clearly. So if that can be an encouragement to anybody, I think we really do need to trust God. And you said, you mentioned like kind of a season of waiting. I do. I get so caught up in the finite and in the immediate aspect of life. And it's like God's just always giving us examples of the long game, and staying faithful. And there's other, there's obviously like if as believers, as Christ followers, integrity and faithfulness and character and your relationship with God obviously transcends 1,000, a million, gillion, zillion times more over what you're actually spending your time doing 40 hours a week.
Yes.
So yeah, I've just really, for the first time in a long time, probably the first time in a long time, I won't say the first time ever, I've had to put my money where my mouth is, and I've had to actually live that and not just say it.
Yeah.
So.
And that's hard. It's hard.
It is.
It's easier said than done, for sure. Yeah. And that's like, it's this whole idea of identity too, and where we put our identity. And that's something that I feel like has come up a lot for me in the last year, and just making sure that I'm not putting my worth in what I do, what I'm doing. And so it's huge, and it's hard to walk through that. So EB, why don't you jump in and continue the conversation?
Yeah. Shane, thanks for being a vulnerable, honest man. I always am thankful when I meet guys and gals that are just really honest about what they're walking through, because I love that passage in Ephesians, the Passion Translation. It says, I think it's 5:2. It says, whatever the revelation light reveals, it will also correct. And I think if we can just get these kind of fears and pain and doubt into the light, is powerful. So yeah, the way I've explained it to people, just stepping into the unknown, which I'm sure, like, take our pieces of our story out. If you're listening, take what, our pieces out and put yours in. I think we can all relate with just walking into unknown territory or longing for more. And right now that's not there, or doing something and you have no clue how you even got there. All those kind of questions are, I feel like, super universal. We all can grab onto pieces of those, but I feel like we've been in heart and heart faith patience trust surgery
Hmm.
the past couple months. And I know afterwards, when you get surgery, something needs fixed. Afterwards, you're stronger for it. But when you're in surgery, it doesn't feel so great.
Right. Yes.
Um, and I think what's been beautiful walking into the unknown for me, you said, Andrea, earlier about the conference, how people were expectant because they fought to get there.
Yeah.
Fought to got there. Oh my goodness, my country's coming out. They had fought to get there, and I think just seasons of fighting. And I mean, I know God goes before us. He cleans up behind us. He's fighting on our behalf. But there's a peace that's our job too. To choose to rest or choose to combat the lies that come at us or whatever. But when you're fighting for that stuff, it does mean more to you, and we are definitely in a season of fighting for like what did God give us and trust us with that we need to be carrying? What do we just kind of tough questions like that come up when things get hard. I think, Andrea, I told you on the phone, I wish that God could teach us when things felt a little bit easier.
Yes.
But we don't learn the lesson, because when you have to fight for it, you do just have a different expectancy. And and I have seen how that's changed my worship. It's changed the way I sing. What were we singing this week? I don't know, just singing the Waymaker song lately. Now when I sing those words, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, it means something different than it did a year ago. So there is such treasure found in the fight and in the pruning and the agitation and all those kind of things. And I think it's another thing. It's given me a lot of perspective. I feel like a lot of times what are those things called where you're connecting the dots, like 1, 2, 3? Are they connect the dots?
Yeah, or dot to dot. We call them dot to dots. Yeah.
Sometimes, I feel like I'm like this tiny little ant, and I've got ink, and I'm going from 1 to 2 to 3. And, like if you're backed away from the dot to dot, you see a picture.
Yes.
But when you're right there at the dots, you have no clue what's going on.
That's amazing, Evie.
That's amazing. Yeah.
So I've tried in this season. I think this is always important, honestly, just having a mentor and someone in your life that can give you perspective when you can't see it is just so important. I was just reading in Matthew the other day about how, true life is found when Jesus is in the desert being tempted, and the first temptation is turning the stone into bread. And he's been fasting for 40 days. I can't even go 2 days without eating.
Yes.
And he's like, no, true life and satisfaction is found in every word from the mouth of God. Like, just, having people around you that can look at your dot to dot and say, no, you're headed towards the 5. You need to be going to the 3. And then just staying in the word of God and letting it, teach you and direct you and guide you, and just being in a place where your hands are kind of tied. You're like, okay, if God doesn't show up and do something, then nothing's going to happen. Even just at the beginning of the year, me getting this cold, I sing for a living. And to lose my voice at the beginning of the year, I was just laying in bed last night like, God, I know you didn't make me sick, but there is something in this that just being in a place where you can't do it on your own, and he's got to come in. I just think that's the way we were meant to live, and so just backing away from our own story and saying, I don't know what to do. I can't do anything, but I will fight to worship you in the now.
Yes.
And I was talking with an old friend the other day. She's in her 60s, and she's lived in Nashville and done the music thing and she moved to Nashville, got a record deal, got pregnant. They dropped her, started writing songs. She's had songs stolen from her.
Wow.
She's just she's just been doing it. She still just got such a smile on her face. And I was laughing. I said, Irene, you have been on a roller coaster. And she said, I have, but at this point, I'm like, I'm buckled in. Let's go.
I love it.
And
Yeah.
I love that. No matter where you're at, if you understand it or not, you don't have to. You can rest, buckle up, and it's just meant to be an adventure,
Yeah.
joyful
I love that.
adventure. And we can embrace it or we can fight it. And I think we're in a season where we're like, we can fight it and get worn down, or we can embrace it and make it our little puppy dog,
Yes. Yes.
Shane uses different words, but you can make it your little
Yep.
puppy.
Yeah. Oh,
We're like fire and water, aren't we?
Shane's like, I had plans for my sessions, and I'm like, I can't remember my sessions.
Yeah. Well,
Oh, man.
well, I even in that moment was like, wait, what was your third session? So don't worry. The one who planned it was like, oh no, wait.
Hey, truth be told, I pulled up the email.
Good for you, Shane.
Thank you.
That's awesome. Well, for those who are listening out there, but also for you, Shane and EB, as we're chatting here, I just want to drop some encouragement on you, and hopefully it will be encouragement for our listeners as well. But, something that my husband and I we've tried to adopt is this phrase of if you're not winning, you're learning. And sometimes I think in life, we think like God, what choice do you want me to make? Which way do you want me to go? Do you want me to go left or do you want me to go right? Do you want me to move to Nashville or stay in Atlanta? Like these questions that we have, what do you want me to do? And oftentimes if they don't pan out the way that we imagined, or if it's not exactly what we expected it to be, we think, this was a fail, this was a misstep, or I made a wrong choice. And that's not necessarily the case. Sometimes God moves us or allows us to move so that he can get a hold of us and get our attention. And sometimes he agitates things or allows them to be agitated so that we stop and ask these questions. And it's not fun to have these conversations with our spouse about, identity and, job, security, all of those things. It's hard, but it's also, I stop and ask myself, would we have had these otherwise? Would we have had these conversations? Probably not, because we wouldn't have needed to. And so I guess that just kept rolling through my mind as you guys were talking, that, we as believers and as we walk through life, it's like a choice we have to make. Like, okay, I may not feel like this is amazing, and I may not feel like this was all I thought it was going to be, but I'm learning. It might not feel like a win right now, but I'm learning. And, the other thing is that, and Shane said that you say this to him all the time, and I just encourage you both with it too, that what you have is needed. And it might not be needed in the way that you think. And for those that are listening too, it might not be the way that you thought it would fit in the puzzle. I certainly did not imagine this puzzle of my life to be what it is at all. I kind of had an idea. This is, what it's going to be. I'm going to be an artist and I'm going to write songs and do, records and that kind of thing. And it was just like, God was like, nope, that's not exactly the path. There will be songwriting, there will be, but that's not the path. And it's like, he's also grown different passions and skill sets in me that I didn't know I had. And I didn't know that he wanted me to possess or that he put there. And so for you two, for those that are listening, I just encourage you with that as we wrap up our time, that what you have is needed. And God put it there for a reason, and he's going to bring your dreams and passions to fruition and in his time and in his way. And, a verse that I read yesterday, I don't know what translation it is because it was like written in a journal that, it's printed in a journal. So I got to find the translation, but it's from Psalm 62. And it's, the verse that's like, when I hope in the Lord, my hope is in the Lord. I wait on you and my hope is in the Lord. Well, this one said, my expectation comes from you. And as I as I thought about that, it was like the Holy Spirit just spoke to me to surrender my days to what his expectations are. Like, Lord, what are your expectations? Make those mine. Make your desires my desires, your expectations mine, so that I approach this next season of my life with your expectancy. And so that's just, what the Holy Spirit's been speaking to me personally over the last weeks. And then as we were chatting, I just wanted to share that with you two and with our listeners. So hopefully you can leave encouraged and, empowered to continue on your journey and your path. So
That's amazing. Thank you so much for.
Thank you.
yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys so much for sharing your hearts and being open and vulnerable. I think that is just such a beautiful thing when we can be open with each other about our joys and struggles, because we need that. We need to know we're not alone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you so much for your encouragement, Andrea, and to bounce it back at you. I loved hearing that, because we're still getting to know you. And so I'm just getting little deposits here and there of, your story and kind of how you're wired and stuff. And you really I think, how many years have you been doing Overflow?
6.
Yeah. So, I didn't know anything about it until last year when you started talking to us about it. And then we jumped in October, and to see an idea that you had in your heart and to see what God's done with it in 6 years is so inspiring and so incredible. So I want to encourage you too. It's incredible. And I just love that you shared that, and thank you for allowing me to be vulnerable and encouraging us.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for that encouragement too. I really appreciate it. And as you know, it's much needed along the way. We all need those little bits to get us to the next day or the next step. So thank you. I really appreciate that, and appreciate you guys, all of you listeners out there. Thank you for joining us today. I hope that you have a great rest of your day, and know that we are here for you. If you need us, you know how to find us, and we would love to chat with you or pray with you. You can reach us at info@overflowworship.com. Talk to you later. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Overflow Worship Podcast. To stay up to date, please subscribe for the latest episodes and information. To learn more about the ministry of Overflow, visit overflowworship.com. If you have questions or prayer requests, we would love to hear from you. You can reach us at info@overflowworship.com.